the third Running for Resilience podcast with the great Sammy Wilson from Sobering Thoughts. Sammy, how are you, mate?
I'm pretty good, mate. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for asking. And we've got our first guest, our official guest, Tim Fulton from R4R. Timmy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be a part of
it. Long-time listener, first-time caller sort of stuff.
Exactly.
You've probably been our only listener for our first two episodes.
And do it every minute of it. Oh, my wife's been listening too. I've been putting it on the speaker out in the living room, so she's been forced to listen to it, and she's had a few chuckles through the first two episodes. So I reckon she'll probably listen in again.
Well, that way we got three listeners. I know my brother listened to at least one of ours, so that's three. Sammy, we're going all right, mate. That's
Mate. You just do it because you want it, because you enjoy doing it, and if people listen and more people listen, that's just fantastic. So.
Well, Timmy, I guess Sammy and I've been sort of chatting what we want to get out of doing this. Like, what's the point of it? Other it's just good to have a yarn once a week for half an hour. We did an hour and a half the other week, Sammy. We did nearly 2 hours, I think.
Yeah. You and I probably shouldn't be left to our own devices sometimes.
Nah, my wife and kids were away, so I was like, need someone to talk to. So Sammy and I just shot the breeze for a couple of hours. But Timmy, you had a really good idea while we were running. Do you want to share that with Sammy? Like when Brainy and I were starting Running for Resilience, we said it has to be consistent and sustainable. Like it's got to be going for the long haul, whatever we try and do. So if we're going to do this podcast, I'm really keen to do it for a bloody long time. And so how can we do it? How do you think we should go about it?
Yeah, I've had a few thoughts, because I think, like you said, it's about sustainability, and I think it's also appreciating that things will maybe never always go to plan. So how do you kind of set things up so you've got maybe a bank of material that you can draw upon, so you don't necessarily always be having to hit every week. So it might be you do a 45-minute session because that is sustainable to sort of do in one hit, but maybe you cover 3 different topics, 15 minutes each, and then you kind of split them up and you release each 15 minutes sort of in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, so that you've always got a bit of buffer in the continuity, if that makes sense. So it might be going, these are 3 things or 4 things that we want to talk about this week, and sort of spending 10 or 15 minutes talking about each of those things, and then cutting it up and sort of creating 3 episodes out of one session. So we're just some ideas around how we might be able to sort of, when life happens, not being too stressed out that we've got to try and find a block of time, and just being able to build up a bit of bank. And I think it also allows people to engage in the content that's interesting to them, which might be a segment.
Because you could cover a topic for whatever, 15, 20 minutes, and then go on to something else that someone mightn't be interested in, but then go on to something else that they might be, and they might tune out during that period and then miss out on the bit at the back end that they may have been interested in. That's probably, and I suppose I guess the other thing, Benny, would be maybe like when people are able and want to, I can go for longer and chop it up into more if it's convenient. If it's not, then you sort of do it when you can, and when you can't, you're in front because you did it before, you know.
Yeah, I like both those ideas. It was just, whatever we think is sustainable. So I from working in the pub, I've really observed that people live on these weekly cycles. Mm-hmm. They're really head down, bum up, focused on work Monday, Tuesday. And the stats for when people are on social media the most is about 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. Between 9 and 11 a.m. is like traditionally, if you look at all social media, they publish their stats of when the most amount of people are on it. It is by about Wednesday, people are a bit sick of work. I might jump on Facebook or jump on Insta. But I guess my point is, and you guys will know that with the blog, especially you, Samo, lately, like people Like it is hard to get into their weekly cycle. Like, and running for resilience is now becoming part of so many people's weekly habit because they know 6 p.m. there's a run on. Now, some weeks they go, some weeks they don't. But people are now, because of its consistency, they know organizing it. They know it's coming, and they're organizing their week around it. So, I'm just a huge believer in consistency. Like whatever our content strategy is, I think we just figure that out as we go. But I really think if we're pushing something out, whatever it is, if it's a 10-minute one, 15-minute one, hour, I don't just pushing something out at a certain time once a week, or shooting for that. And then even if I'm not here or Timmy's not here or I'm not here, you guys run it for a session or vice versa.
I was going to talk on that, but the way I can best explain it is there's 9 members of the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Go through a track list. There's very few songs that all 9 members feature on. Do you know what I mean? But they're all in the clan. They release the album together. And it's like, well, fuck me and old mate here we got this thing we want to do. And if the rest is that's pretty cool. We'll stick it on the album. You don't have to, it can be whoever. As if there's 2 people keen and ready or 5 or whatever, or whatever. Like, you know what I mean?
100%. My favorite podcast just did its 100th episode, and one of the main characters, there's 4 guys, but one of them's taking a few weeks off, and they've got someone else coming in to fill the spots for the couple of weeks. So we got to keep it consistent but flexible because we've all, like you said, life happens, and
I think consistency over, like consistency in terms of time rather than even like topic or people or whatever, you know what I mean? As long as there's a sort of core group that, you know, some can, some can't each week or whatever, you know, like, and I think like I love how with like Breeny with R4R just says every time, no matter what, every single Wednesday it's on. Public holiday, fucking pissing down rain, 42 degrees, it's on. You know what I mean? And then people sort of can lean on that. They know no matter what, you know, like, and I'm a fucking stickler for routine anyway. So
same. But what do you want to get out of this, Timmy? Like for me, I write to help organize my thoughts, but it's sort of the next thing I want to get better at talking my thoughts and communicating. And I thought this would be a bit of fun. So that's what I want to get out of this, to become a better oral communicator. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I think similar to you, kind of see like 2 facets in life where I'd like to try and improve. I guess my ability to stick on my feet, to sort of bring my ideas together with clarity. So in my work, obviously, sort of with presenting work, you need to be able to read other people, understand what they're saying, sort of be able to, to be able to present ideas in a clear way. And then I guess with being rare and trying to advocate for those living in Australia with rare diseases, that's brought about opportunities as well to speak at different events and occasions where it's sort of, I guess, overcoming some of that anxiety with speaking in a public forum and sort of being able to think a few steps ahead as well. And so I think for me, there's obviously that part of sort of just practicing my speaking and doing it on a regular basis. And then I think as well, it's just a good opportunity for me to be able to connect into a community of people who have similar interests to me. Like we all run together, we all write together, we're now all talking together. And I think for me, I guess there's a social element to it as well. Like I get to hang out with you guys and talk about stuff that I otherwise probably wouldn't really get an opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, I don't really have any other social circles where I suppose it's certain these sort of topics, I suppose, that we touch on from here and there are as openly discussed, you know, like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I just like it. Like it's helping me a lot. Like the writing has been. I'm fucking starting to do some pretty deep or some deeper stuff with my psychologist and like peeling some shit back, you know, like the onion and stuff, going through that. And
You are pumping out the words, mate. I tell you, you're like,
I got a lot. I got a bit
pumping
going.
out the words.
I got a bit up top, bit to process, and it's just like it just helps, man. And like, you know, through all the things I'm doing, I think they all sort of tie in together, and things like this help. You know, like so. Selfishly, it just fucking helps. But I mean, it's just, I think too, like it's just a good thing to do to like, especially sort of coming from my background, you know, like construction and whatever. Like, it's good to talk about topics that like are important, but you don't, well, previously haven't had like an avenue to go down to discuss them with people, you know what I mean? And like life's busy, man, and like I can't get to R4R as much as I'd like to, or as much as I even thought I'd be able to, you know. And even there, you got 200 people, like, which is great, it's the best. But half the time, you know, if I come down on a Wednesday, it takes me 2 hours to get home. I can't even hang around, you know, like, so it's, and you don't get an opportunity. Whereas I suppose this is different, where you set the time aside to almost make sure you're having the conversations that you want to have, you know, and it's a good opportunity, because sometimes, you know, when you're like, oh, I want to talk to that person about that, but, and I'll text them, I'll call them or whatever, and you don't, you know, because some other shit happens. So I think it's probably a healthy thing to have like a time set aside where it's like, righto, this is it, like, you know, here's the opportunity, you know, like it's
You know, like Friday, instead of Friday Avo at the pub, it's Friday Avo on the pod.
yeah, well, that suits me just quite.
Sam or
But
Ben,
yeah, you go, Timmy.
I was just going to say, do you guys find, like, obviously all of us are in pretty constant contact with one another, sort of, whether it's through the writing of our articles that we share with each other, or sort of through messages. Do you find that in some ways that sort of providing the groundwork to go deeper on these topics, because it's sort of like you're getting all the surface level stuff kind of out in our conversations, and then when you come to write, or whether you're seeing a psychologist, it's like, I've got this stuff I've kind of gone through this layer already with sort of the friends around me, and now I can kind of go deeper, as opposed to doing some of that more surface level with the psychologist, and then you run out of time and you kind of don't ever get to some of that core stuff.
We were talking today about bandwidth, like in the chat, and I think that's why, by talking about it in our blogs and now, like, to go deep, I think takes a lot of mental bandwidth, like to think deeper. And but as we're doing it as a group and together and talking about it, I think it's collectively helping us to go deep on some of those important topics. Whereas I know I used to have it trying to figure out everything all inside my own head. That's why I just write it, get it out on a page, and just send it out. Then I'm getting all, like, the amount of value I get from the comment section of my blogs and the feedback I'm getting, especially from Sammy's one of the key big contributors there, guilty suspects, but there's been a few others. A lady that's on the New Sales Vet Board with my uncle, she was posting anonymously, and one day I go, sorry, who are you? Like, why are you helping me? And then she ended up messaging me on LinkedIn saying, hi, I'm SA. She's this unbelievably successful woman who, yeah, is like very well renowned in like agricultural businesses, and she helped me with my pitch. And so just, I guess the point was, yeah, I don't feel like I'm, all the stuff I've got going on in my head, I don't feel like I'm having to process it all myself. I have this community of people. As long as I can get what's in here out for people to see, my, like, whatever's going on in my head, they can help me think it through on certain topics.
It's almost like presenting a problem to a group. You know, this is the problem I have. This is my thoughts about it. Generate a conversation from it, and then, you know, being willing to, like, let, you know, be open to listening to anything that comes back in, and allowing that to influence, you know, your thoughts on it, because it helps you. It helps you like get a clearer understanding of your own I was thinking yesterday, like I saw my psych yesterday, and I was thinking like I don't know why. I don't know if I'm fucking late to the party with this, but I was like, this is different. Like for so long, I sort of thought I'll go there, I'll pay her money, she'll fix me. But yesterday, I sort of changed my whole mindset to like, this is just a check-in. This is like having a nutritionist that you see once a fortnight and go and sit down with them and say, well, this is what I've done well, this is what I've struggled with, blah, blah, blah. And it was only yesterday, after like fucking 13 years on and off, that I was like, holy shit, like, I got to do this. You know what I mean? Like,
you're just reporting back in. You're just reporting to them.
It's literally just a check-in. They're guiding you. They don't do any of it for you. They can't. And I sort of knew that part, but I was sitting there kind of like, at times I've got frustrated with psychologists because I'll go there and they won't tell me what to do next. I'm like, well, fuck, what do I do? What do I do? But they're pretty tricky. Like they sort of plant stuff in your head. And she told me this, like, she's like, because mine's going on maternity leave after Christmas. And I didn't want to start with a new one because I'd already done so much with this one. So I went back to this one and she's like, you've got stacks of rebated ones on your plan because they went from 10 a year to 20 a year during COVID. So I had like 20 to get through from like September to December if I wanted it. But she's like, I can't see you more often than a fortnight because it's going to take a fortnight for what we talk about to process and land. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And then it does though. Like there's things that we'll talk about and like 10 days later, I'll have a light bulb moment like, that's the fucking thing. She said that would happen. You know what I mean? Like, but I think because I'm this time around, like I got sober and now I'm having the initial conversations in, the form of a text, which is to me easier than someone face to face. It's like baby steps, right? Like you can bring up an idea in the chat group and you sort of, text is heaps easier. You're not watching people react or whatever. And then you can bring that up and sort of float it and see how people react. And then you can sort of choose to or not to then discuss it in a format like this. And you can sort of ease your way into it rather than being in public with someone somewhere busy and being like, oh, fuck, by the way, like I'm really struggling with this, while people are eating dinner and shit like that. You can sort of try it in smaller steps and get a little bit of confidence from each step. And then when so especially for people who are anxious or nervous or whatever, like bringing it up, in a chat group is fucking confronting, and people say, well, why didn't they ask for help? Why didn't they ask for help? It was fucking hard. You know what I mean? Like it's confronting. It's scary. You talk about people who are scared to go to Woolies. You know what I mean? Or why don't you bring up a friend and go have a coffee in the middle of public and fucking pour your heart out about how you're feeling? It's like, dude, I'm fucking, like, I don't want to leave the house. What do you mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think, I suppose to get back to Tim's question, I think like the more you can do away from whatever, your psychologist or whatever, the more you'll get out of the psychologist if that's what you're doing, you know what I mean? Like, and through the, WhatsApp groups or messenger groups and then things like this and Google Meets and whatever, the more active you can be doing things like that. And I think that's really why I'm so active in it, because I'm sort of searching a bit at the moment, and I'm sort of really motivated to get this shit sorted because I don't want my kid to get too old before I've sort of got more stuff sorted out. So I sort of need it.
You're in a hard spot being down the coast, though. You're like, I don't know how many mates you got down there, but
yeah,
find it hard.
Yeah, but I mean, even when I lived in Canberra, I didn't see anyone nearly as much as I wanted to, and I imagine you guys are the same. Like, we don't spend enough time with our friends and family. Like, no way. I don't think anyone truly does anymore. It's too fucking hard. It's like, and through COVID and then being busy and we work, a standard work week is way longer than it ever has been, and I don't even know if there is a standard anymore. Like, so it's just, yeah, I think it's That's it does, Tim. Yes, the answer is yes. The WhatsApp group, the things like this, writing, for me, it's like the baby steps that you can test something with less repercussion. And if you're an anxious person or a paranoid person or whatever, 9 times out of 10, you put yourself out there and it's warmly received. But in your head, it was never going to be warmly received. But if there's these, now we have these smaller steps we can take to test it. Do you know what I mean? It's like having the fucking hot plate on and you want to see if it's hot, but you got like 3 different thicknesses of gloves first. You know what I mean? You don't just put your hand on the fucker. You're like, you got a thermometer to check or something like that. It's just like, it feels safer. That's probably the best way I can describe it. Like, you feel there's safety to it. Like, if something doesn't, if you try something, you can back away easier. But like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's received better, and people are familiar with it, and people understand. You're like, holy shit! Like, people like this have been around this whole time. I've been thinking I'm the only one like this. You know what I mean?
And on the not wanting to put your hand on the hot plate, like a bit worried about it, but I know you're a bit worried about turning on paid subscriptions for the blog, and now you did that. You pushed through. I mean, yeah, talk us through that. Like, I mean, I hope I nudged you a little bit.
You did. I'm still. So my idea was to do my Tuesday one every week, keep that free, and then I just wanted to do another one about whatever the fuck I wanted. Later in the week or whatever, whenever I get a chance. I did one last week and I fucking just made it free. I was like, I can't do it. And then I did one today and I made like 80% of it free and put the paywall right at the bottom. so I'm getting there. But I was thinking like, I can't fucking make people or ask people for money. But then I was like, well, some people have given me money, so I owe it to them to give them something that not everyone gets.
And what Substack said the best way to think about when you deciding between paid or free and paid, you think about your blog as like a concert.
Yeah.
So the free is the show, and the backstage access is the paid.
Yeah.
So they always say, make your best content free, but then the really personal. So there's been a lot of like investor ones where they share their portfolio only to the paid subscribers. They'll get far more in-depth personal information for the paid, but they'll just give investment advice or portfolio analysis for the free. But then they'll actually, for the paid, they'll actually they'll show what their share portfolio looks like actually screenshots of it. So I thought that was always an interesting way to help if people are wondering, what do I share versus what do I keep for the paywall?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one on Substack, because I think in particular, given what a lot of us write about, which is around, I guess, mental health in different ways, it's sort of also like maybe there feels like there's a certain level of security with making it putting some of that content behind a paywall so that it's just not available to everyone. I don't know, that's something I've kind of been thinking about. It's sort of like, on the one hand, you want to be transparent and open and sort of show people kind of what living with mental challenges or facing life adversity is like, but then also a certain level you want to protecting some of that too.
To me, that's because I still am, I guess, to be honest, a little bit torn, because I'm like, fuck, if you want to write stuff that you believe might help people, you shouldn't charge for it. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, I shouldn't expose so much of myself for nothing. And obviously it's certainly at this point, it's more of an experiment than trying to make money. If I was trying to make money, I'd do something else. It's purely an experiment. But yeah, I sort of found myself torn a little bit, but on that sort of safety side of it, I kind of did that today. I was talking about this run and whatever, and how where I'm going to run on Sunday.
Spoiler alert, mate. Spoiler alert. I haven't read it yet. Come on, mate. I've got it in my inbox. I don't want to
Anyway, well, there was a section, blah, 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 whatever, and then paywall, and then below that, it's like the shit that I found hardest to write, I guess. The shit that I sort of struggled with a little bit. But I see, like, with my psychologist and stuff, like, essentially my problem is any negative feeling I've ever sort of had, I don't acknowledge it, and I have to. So, like, it's funny, I was listening to that Scattered Minds book by Gabor Mate, and he was talking about a patient he had with ADD, and he goes, I never know how I felt until after. You know what I mean? When he's in the negative feeling, he doesn't even know. And it's only on reflection, because that's his brain being like, nah, fuck, I'm not going to feel that. I don't want to feel that. And it's only on reflection. But you need to feel them. They're as important as the positive ones. And so forcing myself.
Feeling the negatives make the positives feel even better.
Exactly. And I talk about it a bit, but I'm fairly, like, apathetic often. Nothing I've ever done or do sort of really impresses me or anything, you know what I mean? Like, fucking saved and bought a house, and I moved in, I was like, like, trained and ran my first marathon, and then when I did it, I was like, like, is that it? Like, do you know what I mean? So, and that could be why, because I never... I've been to a lot of funerals and, like, barely cry and whatever. Like, and that's not because I'm fucking tough. It's because I'm I'm stupid. I'm not stupid either, but I shouldn't have, because I've built that wall that as a defense mechanism. Like, I don't. I just don't allow myself to feel the extreme lows. So the reference of what's an extreme high is just not there. It's like I just fucking cruise along somewhere in the middle here because I'm too scared to feel the lows. So like, other than the young, like my son, like it's really weird. Like, I haven't felt like a joy like I get from him, which is weird because, like, not even close. Like, I've had other shit in my life that's really good. Do you know what I mean? Like, from the outside looking in, you'd be like, yeah, well, it's not like your first kid, but it's a fucking pretty good thing. And it doesn't even fucking half compare, So, but that's the exciting part, I suppose, is you've got to do that bit and hopefully the rewards after, So, I know it's the right thing to do. It's just got to do it. Like, I'm feeling more conscious than ever about, like, when I feel like shit, to let myself feel like shit. You know what I mean? If I want to be upset and be upset, it's okay. Like, you know what I mean? I always, oh no, well, you can't be upset. And I don't know, we'll be here for fucking 38 hours if we try and figure out why. But again, back to Tim's question. Yeah, that's what fucking it helps me with.
That's like the toxic, what they call it, toxic positivity. You're just like, always looking for, like, the bright side of life to avoid. Sometimes it's a bit shit and you got to wallow in it a bit, because that's when that pain that you're experiencing will actually teach you and help you learn what caused it, and so you can avoid it, or not avoid it in the future, especially if someone dies, because that's going to happen. But, like, I know mistakes I've made, really facing up to it, my responsibility or my fault or my part in those mistakes, it really sucked and hurt a lot to, like, really go, I fucked up there. But that pain is teaching me and helping me, like, to avoid or like learn the lessons from the mistakes I made in the past. So I'm not going to make them again.
And if you learn, you don't lose.
Yeah.
I think, like, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. You guys go.
I guess I have one quick question for you, Sam, and maybe Ben as well. You're sort of, I guess, describing, in some ways, like, detaching yourself from both low and high sort of emotional experience. I think, like, I can resonate obviously to a degree with that, where I think like I shut myself off from dealing with a lot of, I guess, pain and struggle and trauma in my own life. And similar to you, Sam, it was like I'd set myself a goal and then I'd achieve it and I wouldn't feel anything. And so it would be, all right, what's the next goal? Thinking that maybe get that, then I'll feel something. But in some ways, it's not necessarily, the problem wasn't necessarily like with attaining the goal. It was that you're just shutting yourself off completely from emotion in general. And so by detaching, I guess, your emotional capacity, you're not feeling either end of the spectrum, like you kind of described, Sam. It's like you're kind of just flatlined in life. And it's like, because and I don't know whether it's just trying to avoid trauma or avoid pain, whatever it is. And I think that's been, I think, an experience for me over really, I think since I got 6-7 years ago, of like beginning to feel things again, and having, like, creating the time and the space to go, you know what, living with a chronic disease does suck, and there are challenges that are associated with that, but by connecting into that hardship and that pain has actually as well brought a lot of joy and gratitude, but it's making yourself vulnerable to feeling again, because I think sometimes we numb ourselves in order to protect us from pain, but the consequence is that then we don't experience joy or gratitude or contentment as a consequence. But I don't know whether that's the same for you, Sam, or not.
I was interesting. I was listening to Mark Boros podcast with Ned Brockman today, because he's the man of the moment, and he was talking to him about his running, and he goes, like, why do you set these goals, and how do you go if you don't have a goal? He goes, well, if I don't have a goal, I just I don't train nearly to, you know, my capacity, or you know, I sometimes don't even want to train. And he said to him, so why do you have the goal? He goes, is the goal actually to distract you from something else? Do you know what I mean? And so obviously not with the house, because I fucking needed to live somewhere. I'd rather it be my house than someone else's. But like running, like I was so fucking bad with metrics with running. Like I was like, I fucking need to run a marathon. Why? Because my dad did. So okay, cool, I'll do one too. And then it's like, well, I need to run it quicker than he did. Why? Like, who gives a shit? But I needed to, so I did. I wrote about it today anyway, like metrics and how fucking stupid they are. Like last year, the back end of last year, I averaged 100 Ks a week, like, and then for 6 months, like, for no fucking reason. There was a reason, but there wasn't like a logical reason where I would benefit from running that much. Do you know what I mean? There was a deeper reason. And I think ultimately it's funny now, like looking back from that point into like early this year into COVID, that was sort of where I really fucking COVID, I think, I can't blame COVID, it's my fucking fault, but COVID sort of was the catalyst for me fucking taking the fucking real big dip in my behavior and eventually getting to a point where it had to fucking stop. So, yeah, I think like maybe the running was all it was doing was stopping that, you know, eventual fucking why can't I think, inevitable crash. Because as soon as I wasn't able to run, or I got overrunning because I ran too much, you know, like I was almost metaphorically running from a problem, and then I fucking ran out of energy to run from the problem anymore. The problem presented itself further, and fucking.
There's the saying that people think they're running to something, but they're usually running from something.
Mm.
And I know I ran my PB, parkrun PB, was in the year after I retired from footy, and my grandma died. It was the first time I'd lost someone. I retired and my grandma died, who I was really close with, in the same month. And that was the month first got into parkrun and really like train during the week for it, and every Saturday I'd go balls out trying to do a PB. And I smashed my PB, like shaved heaps of time off, did a really good time, but only now looking back at the time I was running from the sadness that my grandma died, and then a great chapter of my life had finished. And I had to focus on something that was making me feel good, and that was running hard each Saturday and trying to beat my PB. Didn't realize it at the time, but that's looking back, 4 years ago, that's absolutely what I was doing.
And you know why running's so good is because you can do it anywhere, anytime. It's like the most accessible thing you can use to distract yourself in a healthy way from something that you're trying to distract yourself from. The only thing as accessible is like alcohol, right? Like or a walk, which is the same sort of shit. But like you can run or buy a beer within 5 minutes of almost anyone's house or anyone's work, or it's just so accessible. And look, it'll make more sense to you later, I think, Benny. But I think it's better. It's better than some of the alternatives. And I did some shit that I didn't think I'd do, running wise. Ran some times and shit early this year that I never thought I was capable of, and that's all really cool. Had a really big month where I ran heaps of Ks, and I never thought I'd run that many Ks in a month or a week or whatever. But like,
none. What does it mean? What does it actually mean?
Fucking nothing. And I talk about it like they're not. None of those things that I achieved when I was in that state are close to like the proudest run I've ever run, or like the one that I'm most proud of. You know what I mean? None of them. They don't fucking mean anything. But and maybe I avoided catastrophe. You will never know. But by running that much, I don't know. But I certainly think in hindsight, there's a fucking obvious correlation between what was going on in my life, and like work was fucking flat stick. It was stressful. Understaffed, trying to get pregnant, not getting pregnant, getting stressed and frustrated about that, like then stressing that maybe we can't get pregnant, like there's something wrong with me, like why can't I, like I'm fucking 32 at the time, we should be able to get pregnant, and like so obviously it's interesting to reflect back and be like, holy shit, like you were nowhere near in the place you thought you were, and ultimately we found that out. But handy to know for next time or for other people, I reckon.
I have a really quick question for you, Ben. So like Sam has been kind of talking about like metrics and kind of goal setting, and I guess how you have to be careful and mindful of how you utilize that. You've obviously like your career as a professional athlete is probably one of the most unnatural settings for someone to be in terms of like constantly having to show up every game. It's like you have to be on. You can't have necessarily a poor game. Like you can't go into work and I'm a bit tired and I'll do something else to sort of get through the day. Like you're in a setting where like every week you've got to show up more or less and perform. You're performing in front of other people. Like, how did you sort of go through your career, and how did you kind of manage kind of the metrics and all the analysis? Like, there's probably few professions that have as much scrutiny and like
data.
Yeah, data, and like, was that something throughout your career that you had to contend with or manage?
They started, like GPS started, and all that really started to pick up probably the early part of my career. Like we'd always have to put a GPS pack on for every training, and they'd scrutinise they'd scrutinise how you went at training. So we used to have like a GPS report at the end of the week which showed how far everyone ran at training. But I mean, I thought it was great because it helped it helped me get the best out of myself. The internal metrics, I mean, the main one that pissed me off was like the fat levels and skin folds, because I was still really fit, but because my fat levels were too high, I'd get stuck in fat club, even though I was fitter than some people who weren't. So that was probably the only one that I got a bit shitty with. Was there the metrics around how much fat I had and whether I feel that I don't really feel that it impacted my performance that much. But then I'd still get punished and have to do extra training, which I did not like doing.
Because there's like a model, right? Like the perfect front rower has this much muscle mass, this much body fat, blah, blah. And they think that, like we talked in the chat about Rapini Faufau, like, wasn't like he didn't look like an athlete. He's the best rugby player in the world for a couple of years. Like, do you know what I mean? David Boone, cricket's not quite as athletic, but like, watch UFC, Bam Bam and stuff. Like, Bam Bam would knock out an elephant, like, I think it's wrong to like be like everyone should be like this because no one's the same. Like,
well, and that's what you just said, everyone. So I think data's great for looking at trends and what your prototype or what you could profile what a front rower looks like. So we had obviously strength metrics. So if you want to be world class, you were, say for deadlift, they had metrics for front rower. So a deadlift for an academy player needed to be doing 150, for example, and then a Super Rugby probably doing 200, and then international was 250. So they had these sort of benchmarks, but they aren't to live and die by. That if you deadlift 250, therefore you're going to be a great player. It's way more complex than that. But it doesn't mean that those benchmarks and metrics aren't still useful. But like you said, not everyone is the same. So therefore they aren't. Yeah, they aren't to live and die by, but they are still useful. And for me, like, it's just around. Like, I'm really glad I knew I'd always do about 20 to 25K a week of running while I was playing. So I've just tried to keep that much up since retiring. I felt great while I was doing 20 to 25K a week. I mean, totally different. Like, we were doing contact, tackling, weights. Now I got really tired of that, but I'd love to rock up to Brumbies training, put my boots on for touch or a skills session or even a fitness session. Like, I'd still do that. The bit I don't miss is all the contact and just the amount of bashing we did. They found that more draining than the actual aerobic capacity stuff we did. But so I found that super useful. And again, 25K doesn't have to be to the point, but it is just a bit of a North Star for me. That I know if I do roughly around 20, 25K a week, that's at least that box ticked. And if I'm not feeling great, I know it's not because I haven't exercised. It's because of something else that's going on, and that just helps me find the source of why I feel off quicker.
Yeah, you can troubleshoot, and just when you
troubleshoot, exactly. That's exactly the troubleshoot really quickly.
When you go to troubleshoot, you're like, well, I know it's not exercise because I've done that like I do every week.
I know it's not my nutrition because I know it's not my sleep. So okay, maybe then I start thinking, all right, well, I've probably let too much get on my plate because I'm doing all the others right and I'm still tired. All right, so I'm overwhelmed. So and then I start going, all right, these are all the things on my plate. Which one or two things can I nudge off?
Yeah, what am I doing? What am I doing out of the ordinary?
Am I using my energy wisely?
Just quickly rewind on that, Ben. Like, what do you see as, I guess, the foundation of energy management? Like, what does it mean to you? Like, and what are the things that you're looking for when you're trying to sort of manage your energy? And as Sam said, troubleshooting what might be sort of a bit off kilter or off balance.
It's just always being mindful of your energy, and I think it's more important than time and money. I think we're all living longer, and contrary to popular belief or popular opinion, people actually have more leisure time than ever. It's actually going up every year on average. Like, people actually have more leisure time. So I think we've got more time than ever. It's what people have got less energy than ever, and we feel tired. So it doesn't matter how much energy you've got. If you've got a day off but you're knackered, you've got tons of money, what matter does that make? Like, what does that mean if you're absolutely wrecked? So for me, energy management is about prioritizing your energy. Then I think, like, what does prioritizing your energy mean? I think there's sort of like two sides to it. It's like, working on and focusing on things that give you energy. So for me, it's nutrition, sleep, exercise, time with friends. That's sort of all things that give me energy. And then I sort of then really focus on how do I use that energy that I have? Am I kind of like money? Am I just going to go waste the money, like go to the shops and just waste it? Or am I going to use that money to invest in an asset that will then give me more money in return? So I do think energy is very similar in a sense that you can. I think every bit of energy I put into R4R, I am getting even more back in return. Or every bit of energy I put in my writing, I'm getting more back in return. Every bit of energy I put into Alfred, I'm getting more back in return. So and that's giving me the energy to keep going, keep persevering. And when I'm doing stuff like that, my energy levels are up. When I've got a bump in the road or something that works a bit shit that is draining, I've got a bit of energy in reserve to deal with it. Whereas if I'm like flat and tired and that bump in the road comes, it can really sort of knock me off kilter for a few days. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I think something that sort of came to mind as you were sort of describing that, and I think the analogy is really interesting around like kind of the economy of energy, that there are things that you can invest in where you're going to get a gain and maybe even compound interest. And then there are other things that you're going to lose, there's going to be a deficit on. And I think the example that I can kind of think of when I was sort of just gone into remission and I was starting, I guess, my physical rehabilitation, it was like even like unloading the dishwasher or doing like the washing up was exhausting. And the idea of it was, like it's, I guess, a bit embarrassing, but when you live with chronic fatigue, like it's just simple things that you kind of always appreciate energy that goes into them. And it was at one point like I need to go for a run to get enough energy, because going for a short run or something I knew was sort of just going to get my body sort of going and give me the capacity to do the washing up or unload the dishwasher. Then I'd be in like wrecked. But it's like you said, it's identifying those things in our lives that sort of like, it's a compound interest on energy. It's like you put a little bit in and you're getting a heap more out of it, and that then allows you to do sort of some of those other things that are maybe deficit need to be done. But I guess, as you said, like we've got more time on our hands, but we have less energy. Why do you guys think that's occurred? And what do you think is contributing to that imbalance?
I think it's 100% lifestyle. It's pretty much 100% lifestyle and values on what we value. So we're putting all our effort and energy into stuff that isn't material things they'll give us that little spike in energy. Like you get a nice car, wow, yeah, that'll give you, got a nice car, but then that fades. And all that effort and energy you put into working hard to get that car, it gives you a bit of energy, but then it I think that fades. And then I think people just looking for those short-term hits of, like when we talk about diet, we're just wasting our energy on stuff that isn't genuinely fulfilling. And then there's being on your screens too much and then messing with your sleep, and
I think
a lot of it's diet and sleep.
sorry.
There you go.
I think too, like there's this fucking like social media has got a bit to answer for too. There's like this attitude out there that you got to grind, you got to outwork the other person, while I'm working while you're sleeping. I'm doing more than the competition, like blah 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 blah, and that's like this whole fucking trend where like like you fucking, it's this idea whoever puts in the most hours is gonna get more out of it. Whereas I've been guilty of it in the past, but I'm learning now. I think if you don't have much energy and you spend say 3 hours on something, you're probably going to get the same amount done that you get in 1 hour if you're recharged. Time doesn't, and we've talked about this, Benny, time doesn't equal output. It's time times energy. If your energy's zero, the output's zero. You know what I mean? So, and like, I think, like on energy, like obviously, firstly, like sleep, obviously, that's like physiologically, food again. But I find like shit like this, even writing a blog or whatever, while it can be draining, it might give me energy for the next day. I might sleep better or my head's clearer. And then the next day I wake up, or I might be motivated from something that I've written or exchange in a comment section or something like that. And I think it's just the reason we've got more time but less energy is because the shit we do burns more fuel. The shit we choose to do burns more energy. It runs richer. You know what I mean? Like everyone's like, oh, and I'm real guilty of it. Like, oh, I've got to go. And I'm in a position now where I'm at a point where I fucking have to learn what other than sleep and food gives me energy and dedicate time. And I'm trying to like, do it on Sundays. Obviously this Sunday I got that run, but like I'll dedicate a day on the weekend or half a day on a weekend, figuring out what it is that I can do physically or whatever. Like last Sunday, I sort of, I don't know, I'm still fucking learning. I'm not very good at it. But like last Sunday, I just poked around the house and slowly got my shit sorted for the week, made my breakfast for the week and stuck it in my fridge and like, got all my work clothes set out for the week. And, just these things that will buy me 10, 15 minutes a day. If you do two things, it'll buy you 10 or 15 minutes. That's half an hour a day. That's fucking 2.5 hours in the week. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You can go to bed earlier. You can spend with your kids. You can spend in the garden. Whatever the fuck you do.
It makes the week easier and take less energy once you're in the grind of the week with work. Everything's just a lot easier because you put in a bit of pre-planning on the weekend when you were clear and you had no stress of work, and you go out, give it 10 minutes of prep for the week or half an hour, and that half an hour you put in on the weekend saves you 2 or 3 hours during the week. And that's a great example.
It doesn't take me any longer to pack because I shower at work, whatever. So I was like, why am I coming home every day, unpacking my bag, repacking my bag? Every Sunday, I'll just put 5 days worth of clothes in my bag and leave them at work. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it compounds, right? So like you fucking do it every Arvo, just do it all. Like it doesn't take any longer to put 5 shirts in a bag than it does to put one.
That's what I do. I order gym meals. I have them for lunch every day during the week. Just gym meal, maybe the odd dinner.
Yeah.
I've got a little calendar reminder on a Monday. It takes me 2 minutes to order, and that is probably about 8 meals of the week done. It takes me 1 minute and then 2 minutes each time to microwave them. I still cook during the week every now and then. Well, it's definitely cook breakfast most days, but we still cook the odd meal, especially on weekends. We've got a bit of time, cook something nice, but that's just one little thing that I do that frees up my time and energy for the week. I still get good quality energy, like food. I just, can't speak highly enough of especially gym meals direct. I've been having about 5 or 6 years now. They're awesome.
I think
sorry, you go.
So I was just going to, I think what's interesting is that, like, I think the first step, as you guys have both identified, it's creating time and space in order to create efficiency, but it's not filling that time up with more things on the to-do list. And I think that's where we kind of
less things on the to-do list. Do you want less?
And we've got the opposite, I think, in our society. It's all about how do we create efficiency in order to gain great profit or do more work hours, or what it is, rather than going, efficiency should be bringing down the baseline of effort required and keeping it there, as opposed to then adding things on top of it. And I think as well, like Sam's analogy of time versus energy. So since my diagnosis, 7 years ago, I think I've worked 1 year full time. The rest I've worked 4 days a week, and it got to the point where it was really hard because what are the directors going to think if I ask to work 4 days a week? But the fact is, I'm far more productive in 4 days a week with a rest day than I am trying to slog out kind of 5 days with chronic fatigue. And so kind of going, well, actually, my value as an employee doesn't have to be wrapped up to the number of hours I log a week, because for me, it's my efficiency is in finding a rhythm that works with my body and treatment and whatever else I kind of need to do during the week. And it's kind of, well, that's okay. And some people, it's going to be 5 days, or it's going to be 6 days, or whatever matches, I guess, their capacity. But it's creating space that not everyone is, as we've been discussing, not everyone's the same. And how do we create a society that isn't that hustle culture or pins people's value?
But that's the social media does play a massive part of that. Like, people can show off their successes, like on social media, and you don't see the grind as much, but everyone's showing off how well they've done, and then this keeping up with the Joneses sort of mentality, it is crippling people. Like, everyone is flogging themselves trying to keep up with other people, because other people are only showing off their wins. You're not seeing all the losses, and it's just creating, everyone's trying to outwork each other even more and more and more because of, we can see, like, 50 years ago, how could you see if someone was rich or had a nice car? You didn't. You might see it on the news.
It wasn't your business.
You wouldn't see it. It wasn't your business. But now you can go in that discover bit of Instagram, and you can scroll through and you can see everyone's got a six-pack, everyone's driving a nice car, like, and you think, geez, everyone's killing it. I've got it. Why? And I must be, because I'm not working hard enough. And so I just start working more. But I think the best definition of perfect is not when you can't add anything more. It's when you can't take anything more away. And so, like, I'm always looking like, what do I do each week that I just don't need to do? Let's just, rather than focusing on what do I need to do, I've spent time focusing on what am I doing that I don't need to, and get rid of all of those things first. So, like, screen time and spending too much time on social media, that's the number one thing I'm trying to spend less time on. Trying to get my screen time down a little bit each week. But that's it's tough, especially like with work. I've got to have this bloody authenticator to log into the defense network. So I've got to have my phone on me at my desk, which pisses me off because I'd much rather have it in my locker. But just being in the mindset of what can I get out of my life, which then starts buying time and space that you were talking about, Timmy. But it is different for everyone. It's massively different.
Yeah, I got like what Jimmy was saying before, I got a theory on like Saturdays, right, in construction. When I started 14 years ago, a Saturday was only ever a half day, no matter what, right? And what I think has happened is people have started working them to get that little bit in front, I'll come in, on Saturday just to prep for next week or just to get that little bit in front because I'm a little bit behind. And over time, incrementally, we've got to a point now, like all my mates work 6 days a week, every single week, and Saturday's a full day. And it's not because they're trying to get ahead anymore. They're just keeping up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you own a business, if you're a painter, and if you can't punch out that much work in a 7-day period, you don't win the work.
Yeah. Because
there's 4 other blokes outside who'll come in and they'll work 7 days a week if you let them. You know what I mean? Because people are just so like you can't even like there's a lot of trades and stuff like they can't work 5 days anymore because they just won't be competitive enough. They've got to work six full days minimum, like. Because that's just sort of, and that's happened in like the last 14 years only. Like the amount of hours some people I know work, it's just fucking, and they're making good money and whatever. But they're not, other than the money, they're not gaining anything from doing it. You know,
I think people, it's kind of a little bit of laziness that people aren't. I see in our work, people that let their work, they blow out huge hours because they're not setting boundaries and they're not really focused when it's time to work. They're checking their phone, they're getting distracted. Nothing kills my output than distractions. Someone come and talk to me, even a little message pop up. There's all the science around it, around people, if you could have undistracted time for 4 hours a day, if you could focus and be in that flow state for 4 hours a day, you will get more work done than you can imagine. But people, they're 5 minutes here and then they're distracted. And then it takes 10 minutes to get their brain back to thinking where they were. And then they get distracted. And there's just this culture of distraction where people now, they're not managing those distractions. So that now their only solution is to just work longer rather than bugger off the distractions. Like I've created so many rules now in my Microsoft Outlook, my inbox, where I've seen people that send me garbage emails that have got nothing to do with me. And so I've put, if it comes from this person, it goes straight to my junk, like it's automatically deleted. So I've just got less times my mail thing pops up, deleted all like notifications. So when it's time to work, I can focus for 90 minutes at a time and just not get distracted because I get so much done in that 90 minutes. But it's such a new thing, especially in the last 2 years with working from home and Microsoft Teams and this always on culture. Managing distraction, I think, is like one of the most important skills anyone needs who works in an office. Like, and what do you want?
That's exactly why I started. Well, initially it wasn't. I just sort of did it because I could, but I started going into work at like 5 a.m, and people thought, like, my boss was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you coming in so early?" And I was like, "It's the best time for me." Like the amount of work I get done between 5 and 7 before anyone else got there was like, it would have taken me that 2 hours. Some days that'd take me all day if I rocked up at 7. This morning I woke up an hour earlier than normal, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'll just stay up." And I thought I'll go to the gym, and I hopped in the car. I was like, "Oh fuck, I don't really feel like it." I was like, "Fuck, I got a bit to do at work. I'll just go to work." And I was at work at like 4 a.m. this morning. But by the time my boss came in at like 6:30, I had all of next week planned, organised, everything printed, laid out for everyone else. I was like, it was like 6:30. It was raining. I was like, "Fuck, I can go home." You know what I mean? Like, and now I'm at a point with my work. Like, I don't know how many hours I did this week. It might be 32. It might be 50. I wouldn't be able to tell you how many hours I did because I just do. I'm pretty lucky in that sense, and unlucky, I suppose. But you just do what you need to do, and I know these days when they're starting to take the piss and I need to pull them up and stop, but it doesn't happen so much anymore. But like, yeah, I think that's probably one of the best things to come out of COVID is people who can work autonomously are able to now. And I think it's because that's on the distraction thing, like there's nobody there, like there's nobody there. And people can't even text me or ring me because everyone's asleep. Like not even my missus or my mom. Because
I don't even bother writing. I only write before 6:30 a.m. 95% of my blogging is before 6:30 a.m.
Yeah, wow. I'm literally just thinking right now that I should change what I do. I should try and go to work for a couple of hours at like 4:30 in the morning, go to the gym at like 7:30 once I've kicked the guys off and got them going, and then go back to work. I reckon.
What do you got to lose in giving that a crack, giving that a try for a week?
Nothing. If it doesn't work, I'll try it for a week. If it doesn't work, whatever, I'll just go back to what I'm doing now because what I'm doing now works all right. But this morning I was like, this is the best. This is so good, Rush. This is I love working like this.
And Timmy, this is one thing I never fully appreciated, mate, until you said it the other day, that how you, with your disease, you are so, like, the consequences for you, if you try an experiment like this, where if it doesn't work, so much more severe for, like what I just said with Sammy, is like, what do you got to lose? And he said, nothing, I'll give it a crack. Whereas I made probably never appreciated, I definitely didn't appreciate, especially like for you, trying something new with your diet to see what helps. Because my wife has Crohn's, and so we've been experimenting stuff for quite a long time with her diet. We've got it pretty dialed in now, so she's very minimal issues through diet change. But I just wanted to say, mate, I never really fully appreciated how, the consequences you live with if the experiment doesn't go to plan.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and it's one of, I think, the most significant adjustments since my diagnosis compared to, I guess, life before getting sick, was like, you just rebounded better. Like, you go for a run and that's it. You rebound, your body does the work at night. You wake up, maybe you might be a little bit sore the next day, but you can sort of continue on, like, kind of in a normal capacity. Or if you miss a bit of sleep, like, you might be a little bit groggy the next day, but then you'll be all right once you've sort of caught that up. And I think that's the great challenge of a lot of people living with, like, chronic diseases and fatigue, is like, it's like you go to sleep and you wake up feeling worse than when you went to bed. And it's like, and that's, as you said, it's the real challenge of sort of like when I first started running Rare, and it was like, at that point, I had to think about, if I'm going to walk more than a kilometre, what do I have on the next day that could be impacted by me being really tired or foggy or not being able to think? And that slowly improves, but it was a 12-month process of going from walking around the block to being able to manage to run 5Ks. Versus before my diagnosis, playing hockey in the national team, like, you're training almost every single day, like, your body just absorbs what you put on it. And then now life is constantly about what's the next step, like, what are the things we're going to have to do. Like, we've been invited to a wedding out of town in December, and we're already thinking about, is Tim going to be all right? What are the things we've got to be doing in the weeks before? Is that going to be a guarantee? What's the mitigation kind of strategy if my body just not kind of working? But I think as well, kind of tying it back into what we've been discussing about, how do we in some ways create workplaces that are effective for individuals? Because I think rise of sort of open plan offices, the always on culture, it's like, it doesn't work for a lot of people. Like, it doesn't work for me. It sounds like it really doesn't work for Sam. It doesn't work for you, Ben. And yet, I work in project management, and I understand the importance of sort of team cohesion and sort of having people in the same room to be able to share ideas. But we've also got to be able to be willing to just be quiet and methodical and be in your own space and think through things without, as you said, the constant interruptions. But, like, we've kind of given that up in the way that we create our office spaces, the way that we create sort of team culture and what we perceive to be team culture. So sometimes you're not being a jerk. You just need your space to be able to think through a problem or articulate a message or whatever it is that you're doing. Is not being like, you might get labeled as not being a team player, but it's actually we need to kind of create these sanctuaries in our workplace to do meaningful work.
I will contribute better to the team if I'm allowed this time and space by myself.
And it's not the whole day by yourself. There's just a regular part of the day. You just need a bit of space to do your thing. And then you're there for meetings. And it's just, there's been such a huge shift to how humans work from the pandemic that some of it's swinging back to how we used to do it, but it's the way people work's changed forever. And
that it'll never be exactly the same.
it'll never be. No, never.
I got a bit of a theory on open plan officing and offices and hot desking and stuff. I think it's purely financially driven. I think the team culture collaboration is a load of shit, and it's what they use. They hide behind that because you can jam more people in a certain amount of square meters if you have an open plan office, less cubicles, and you can also lease out sections of your floor rather than your entire floor when you hot desk it. So you can lease out 20 desks over there. It happened. Company I work for in Canberra, they own some other sister companies and whatever, and then all of a sudden we go, we got these monitors and docks and stuff. So the people from the water division, they're going to rent this section of the fucking office out, so that'll help us financially. You know, it's we don't need to fucking sit next to each other. Everyone just worked from home for 2 years. Why do we need to fucking sit next to each other? We've just managed. We've just learned, humans are brilliant in a sense that if they'll figure out a solution to a problem, if they're presented with the problem, they've got no other option.
I'll give a counterpoint to that. So KPMG has been hiring like bonkers, or they're growing rate knots at Canberra office. Only one person I know of that I started at the same time didn't make it through probation. I won't say if it's a him or a her. I won't say his or her name. So pretty much everyone's made through probation except this one person. And they're the only person. So we can work wherever we want. We can work from home. We can work from the client, or we can work from the KPMG office, which is pretty awesome. The office, and so I always go in the office every time I can. But this one person never came in, right? Ever. She never came in, or he or she never came in. And they gave him or her some work to do that they had never done before, like sort of threw them in the deep end to sort of sink or swim. And because that person had never come into the office to meet people and make connections and make friends, when that person had problems, they were stuck at home and didn't know who to call and who to ask for help. And so they ended up getting moved on. Which was quite sad. The only person I know that hasn't made it through probation since I only just got off probation like a month ago. This person's the only one. And so, to your point, Sabo, I think if you know your role and you know what to do, working on your own, there is no need to be at the office other than important team bonding meetings and activities. But for someone new, it is so important to get to know the people that you're working with, because you're going to need them when you have a problem and you don't know how to solve it, especially if you get thrown into the deep end with a task that you've never done before. There's a balance. We're still figuring out the balance.
Almost like you sort of incrementally earn your right to do more and more from out of the office. Yep. Once you're through your probation, you can start working from home 2 days a week.
And so on the footy side, I got the shits. Like, I used to want to go and train at Elite Physique and do all my weights out there, but Brumbies went, no, Ben, you can go train on your day off, but you got to come and do the sessions with all the young guys and set the example for the young fellas. And the reason I got that idea and I wanted to do it was I saw one of the All Blacks props, Owen Franks. He goes to some big powerlifting gym. He never did any weights with the Crusaders. He would go off and he was like a mad addict powerlifter, and they just said, "Yep, we trust you. Just go away and do your weightlifting." And he's got a heap of powerlifting gyms in New Zealand now, but they just trusted him to be autonomous with his weights. And that's what works for you. We pay. For him, he knew what to do. He probably knew what to lift weights better than the coaches knew. But then there's a thing around the science of people finding happiness at work is that you actually need three things. You need to be competent and good at what you do, so you get self-esteem. You want to have autonomy, so you want to be trusted to be able to do your job and left alone and not micromanaged. And the other one was that a sense of belonging and connection with the people you're working with. They're like the three ingredients that they've found is what makes someone happy at work, is that they need those three things. And it's different, like you were saying before, Sammy, with metrics. It is no two people are the same, and there's going to be just like the metrics are different, styles of work are going to be different. What worked for some people won't work for others, and the teams that can the organisations that can have a flexible arrangement that help people find what's best for them, and for people that don't know what's best for them, they don't know the best way to work, and a system that helps them figure that out, I think are the organisations that are going to do the best going forward.
Yeah, I think the solution is through training of people managers, like how to identify what works for people, how to start and have the conversations with people about what kind of arrangement they think will get the most out of them or best for them to be productive, and what can we do to help you help us, sort of thing. Because people are change averse. So you get these old school guys who've been around forever, and they'd rather not. You could sell anything and direct, show them why it's great. If it's different to what they know and they don't, it's too hard for them to understand.
They don't want to invest the energy to learn the new way, even though it will save them energy in the long run.
Well, yeah, 100%. This will make your job easier. Yeah, but in the meantime, I'm going to have to learn it. That's inconvenient. Fuck that.
And I think.
Oh, yeah, Timmy.
I was just going to say, I think it ties in with we're saying before about everyone is stressed out to the max and they're working stupid hours because there's overcommitment that we never actually create the time and the space for change. And that's been something sort of over the last couple of years that our team's been doing, is like trying to create time and space in order to create new tooling or to write new code that's going to make things easier in the long run. But it's having the patience to go, all right, we're going to have to take a short-term hit in order to make a long-term investment. And I think it's the same with this sort of change in how people work. It's like we've got to create the time and space in order to test this out, because it might be, again, one of the short-term hits that's actually going to have a long-term impact. Maybe it's going to ensure that the really skilled individuals in your workplace are going to stick around, not going to go and look for a new job, because they've got, like you were saying, Ben, they've got the flexibility and the autonomy to do their work in a way that suits them. And I think that's the big thing, is like obviously in the media there's been a lot around resignation and going, well, we've got to be, leaders in companies need to be mindful of how do you keep talent, and you do that by, like the example with Sam being able to get in at 5:30, even though that's not in core business hours, but it makes Sam productive. So Sam's maybe going to stick around longer at this company because he can work the way that he needs to. Or for Ben, it might be trying to find a solution around having a device with the two-factor authentication that's not tied into your emails or your messages, so that you can put that distraction in the locker. It's having the willingness to be creative about going, where are people at and how do we enable them to
meet them in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I could have gone to a different company in Canberra and earned maybe 40% more than what I earn now. But it would have been a much more demanding role, a lot more stress on my shoulder, just more hours. And I just wasn't willing to do it because I get a work car. I can use it for whatever I want. I can come and go as I please. No one rings me. We have a rule in the office. You never, ever ask anyone where they are. You just got to answer the phone. If you want that privilege, you just answer the phone when it rings or call back if you miss the call. Like that's, and if your job's not getting done, you'll get found out. You know what I mean? So there's no need to ask anybody where they are or why they're there or what they're doing, because if they're not doing what, especially in my line of work, like if you miss a step, there's 12 blokes on site missing, a key component of what they need to do the work. You're talking, 20 grand down the drain because you forgot to fucking do something. And if that's because you're at the gym instead of, or at home doing fuck all, like you'll get found out. So, I just enjoyed that I had that freedom and I knew what my part of that trade-off is and was. So I wasn't willing to sacrifice that for the extra money. I didn't see that the extra money was worth losing that and then and also having to spend more time at work. Like, it just fucking wasn't. I don't think. Like, there's a lot more money, but I just wasn't willing to sacrifice what I've built and developed here with the bosses that I have.
But it's like 90 minutes. We could keep going, probably another 90 more, but I've got to go in a sec. But I wanted to ask you, Timmy, we were talking before about like making change, making the time and space for change, and how you've got far worse consequences than Sammy and I if one of our experiments doesn't go right. What is your thought process around creating time and space, and how you go about tweaking little things like with your routine or your diet to feel better, have more energy? What's your thought process, especially with you got the far worse consequences if it doesn't go right?
Yeah, I think there are a few factors I think I've been trying to learn sort of since my diagnosis. I think one of the valuable things, and we've spoken about it in this session, is kind of metrics and trends. Like you're saying, Ben, it's like beginning, you don't know what you don't know. And so what you've got to try and do is, like, for example, like with my sleep, sort of starting to track that with a Fitbit. Obviously, maybe it's not the most accurate device, but it provides a level of long-term understanding.
Did you know Benny?
Get it, mate.
Or, for example, because I think we can do one of two things. We can overestimate how much we do something. So it might be, I exercise 5 hours a week, and you might be very sure of that, and you start tracking it, and it's like, I actually only exercise 45 minutes in a week. So one is figuring out what are the assumptions that I'm making, and are they accurate? And if they're not accurate, what needs to change? And I think for me, like, what can be so overwhelming, obviously a complex inflammatory disorder, is like, what's going to work and what's not going to work and what's worth my time. So usually when someone hears that, like, I have a chronic condition, they'll be like, oh, you should drink turmeric and spinach smoothies and that's going to resolve your problem. And it's like, and sometimes that's just because they're trying to be empathetic, but they don't have the vocabulary or the tools to, what they're really saying is that, I'm sorry to hear you're suffering.
Yeah. They don't have the emotional intelligence to like verbalize it.
And so you can kind of get bombarded with all these messages of, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And I think what I've come to the realization of is that all these things might not necessarily cure me, but are going to increase my baseline. So I might live with Still's disease for the rest of my life, and that might never go away, but that shouldn't be an excuse to not work on my sleep or not work on my nutrition or not trying to move as much as I can during that period. And also having, I guess, self-compassion, knowing that it's going to go up and down. Like, I can go from running 6Ks with you guys on a Wednesday night at Running for Resilience to spending the entire weekend in bed 2 days later. And so there's a lot of unpredictability, but it's also, like Ben was saying, well, am I doing better than I was 6 months ago? Or are there things in my life that maybe I can tighten up a little bit, and it's not necessarily going to be a guarantee, but when I look back, I won't be regretting that, hey, if I had just got my eating or my sleep, or if I had just tried to find exercises that were going to work with where my body was at, not having that guilt of not trying. And that's why I started running rare. It was like, in some ways, I was in a really dark place after 12 months of really high disease activity. And I had an option. It was like, I can keep making excuses and I can keep saying, well, I've got Still's disease, so I'm just going to give up and I'm not going to try anything. Or I can go, I've got Still's disease and I'm going to do everything that I've got, and it might not be a guarantee, but when I look back, I can be proud of myself for giving it a go. And maybe I'll be successful out of it. Maybe I might not be, but I've given it a try and I've kept showing up. And that's one thing that I have control over, my attitude and keeping showing up. Everything else is out of my control. My inflammatory levels are out of my control. This and that are out of my control. What are the things that I do control? And I'm going to take ownership of those. I might only be little, but maybe I'll get bigger as things start to fall into place. So I guess that's how I kind of tend to try and tackle the uncertainty and the unpredictability of my condition.
I think mentally too, controlling the things you can control, even if they're all fucking tiny, they still make you feel like you're in control. You know what I mean? Or an element of, at least, you know, like it could be the smallest things, but if there are things you can control and you actively control them, you don't feel completely out of control. And I think that's, for someone like me who's a bit fucking scattered and high strung and whatever like that, that's really important. You know,
it's a waste of energy trying to put energy into things you can't control. Like, you might as well just flush that energy down the toilet and just focusing on what you can control, channeling the energy into that. But the one other thing that really helped me when I was trying to like make little changes to my health and trying to feel better was I fell into the trap of always trying to find the silver bullet, like the one thing. What's the one thing that's just going to make me feel amazing, rather than being of the approach of trying to find lots of lead bullets and just firing one at a time, bang, 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 and then eventually I'll hit the target and kill it. That's something that shift in that mindset massively helped me from going from, rather than trying to find just this one magic thing that's going to fix everything, to rather than just trying lots of little things, but just trying them one at a time and just adding and adding and adding. So Sammy, you went, like you said a heap of times, you just went sober first, then you did something else, and then you started tweeting, and then now the blog, and then it's just as one thing becomes a habit, then you fire another lead bullet, and then another lead bullet, and another lead, and now you're just a fucking scattergun, mate. Just fucking all that shit all over the place.
But I think if you do it that way, you become a better shot, right? Like you fucking
eventually, yep.
Because you're focusing on that one shot you're taking, and then it doesn't matter what you're trying to implement. And you'd know this from your work, Benny. Like when you're trying to implement change, the techniques around it don't change. Whether whether it's diet, fucking giving something up, or starting to run, or running further, or getting up at the same time every day. Once you learn how to make a change, you can apply the techniques to any change that you're trying to make.
Making it sustainable and making it give you energy. So like this podcast, as long as it gives us energy and we walk away going, that's good fun, gave us a bit of energy, we had a good chat, I think we're going to have energy, and our brains are subconsciously going to be, sweet, let's do it again next Friday. And then the Friday after that, and the Friday after that, as long as we keep having fun. But I guess on that, that's a wrap. Session 3 of the Running for Resilience podcast, or Riding for Resilience. I don't think we haven't even got an official name yet, do we, Sammy? Or is this a Sobering Thoughts podcast? Is it? What do we?
Nah, maybe one day we'll talk about that in its entirety, maybe.
Well, thanks, Timmy Fulton, our first guest for the episode. Hope everyone's having a good week, and hooroo.
Great.
So yeah.